Good morning, everybody. This is Lucian Smith in for Richard here on Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk, Mississippi. Continuing a jam-packed show. We got with us in studio the one and only Lieutenant Governor of Mississippi, Delbert Hosemann.
Thank goodness there's only one, but most people say we couldn't take two of that guy.
Well, I appreciate your being here, Governor. I know you got a little bit going on.
We do. We're going through a whole lot of things. We're mainly planning for next year. What we're doing, but we've got some news stories, Lucian, that's come to us in the last few days, and those have to be the Doge people have arrived in Mississippi, and
that's something
they have, and they're asking for a lot of things. I'll give you a couple of examples. The Department of Health wrote me, Dr. Edney's done a great job, wrote me a letter saying that they were pulling $120 million out of his budget.
Goodness.
And that he had looked at the Doge. I guess they got a website or something, and he said there's another $100 million coming, so I'll be $220 million short. So I asked him what were those programs, and he's going through that. What did we lose? Some of them were community health centers. We were rebuilding all the community health centers. They had really been ignored over a period of years, and that's where a lot of primary care is covered in Mississippi. So that was one of the things that pulled out. There were some research things that he was doing on bird flu and some other contagion stuff. So that went out the window. And same time, Mississippi State lost a whole section up there on research. Stonehill and the Delta lost people. The Vicksburg Military Park lost people. So all of those were very difficult because, and I explained this the last time through, we have to decide whether or not we're going to replace those with Mississippi money. That's what's fixing to happen.
Right.
So we may have some of these that we say, well, we're just not going to keep up with bird flu, but we need to finish the community health centers, and that'll be X. So I'm really spending time right now determining X. How much do we really need to go forward? And I am very reluctant to leave contractors with half-built stuff. I mean, those are Mississippi people, Mississippi companies. We really can't do that. So then, the next day, we got a letter from the Department of Education, and under the Doge, I'm not sure exactly how they're all working up there, but the Department of Education got cut $137 million. Now you're doing the math, I hope, and on us. You see, we're running about $400 million so far, and that's just the last weeks. But in the Department of Education, they cut off a number of different matters that were ongoing. Now, some of these are teaching kids that are dyslexic. It could be teaching additional work for schools that were struggling on math. For example, it's hard to get math teachers out in public education. And so I asked Phil Birchfield, who runs the Superintendent's Association, great guy, I asked him to please go find out, what school and how much school. And I brought, and those just came in yesterday afternoon late. And let me give you a couple of instances. East Tallahatchie, that's Charleston. You would be familiar with that. Mm-hmm. $562,000. Then you go over Hattiesburg Public Schools, $1.6 million.
Wow.
For Hattiesburg.
That's real money.
And those were tutorials on math and English, needs-based professional development, and coaching the teachers to do better, technology, structure, all of that. Holmes County, one that's really struggled, $1 million. That's software, reading, and those kinds of things that back up student achievement. Jackson Public Schools, $6,870,000 were pulled last week.
Wow.
And those were programs and services, including HVAC for some of their buildings, upgrades for those, academic support, instructional coaching for individuals, those kinds of things. And
is there an explanation for the cuts? Because I know the theory of Doge is they're supposed to be identifying waste, fraud, and abuse and eliminating it.
Well, what they're doing is eliminating these programs. What this was, let me give you just a couple more.
Yeah.
Macomb, $9.6 million. So all my friends in Pike County, your school system lost $9.6 million.
Wow.
And those are programs for technology, internet switches to get their internets better at school. Expansion of Summit Elementary School was in there, and just a whole series of things. And Warren County was about $6 million. And what they've done, I think, is just freeze program funds that were extended last year. We had these ESSER funds and whatnot, and we had to finish everything by September. We had these projects ongoing, so they asked for extensions to complete the projects. And the federal government granted those extensions sometime late year, or probably in January, before the current president, before my president Trump came in. So as soon as he got here, January the 21st, 22nd, he started this program, and here about 30 days, 60 days later, they sliced $137 million out of public education here. And each one of those districts is, I can tell you, some of this Natchez School, Adams County School District, $2.8 million. South Pike, which is down there again in the Summit area and McCormick area. Vicksburg, my old stomping ground, Warren County District, $7.8 million. So those are huge hits in various parts of our state. And so our next step, which I'll be doing hopefully this week, is to come back. First of all, we've asked for extensions and forgiveness, give us some of this money back. Some of it was incurred between January and March when they cut it off. So we've got some, maybe $20 million we might be able to get back by the fact that they didn't close it off quick enough. But after that, we're going to have to determine if they're going to give us anything back, hopefully, and our congressional district needs to do really well with that. But if not, then we have to decide which ones we're going to spend our money on, or just let the programs grow. And
you don't have a money printer like the federal government does?
No, sir. We're on the debt. We pay off debt. We're like regular citizens down here.
Is there? I mean, obviously the legislature left without a budget. Mm-hmm. Is there? I mean, it sounds like because of this, it may work out for the best that y'all are able to formulate the budget a little bit closer to the beginning of the fiscal year with more information.
I think that's without question. And look, Lucian, you've been around long enough. They haven't touched DEQ, marine resources, child protective services, mental health. Those are ones I can come off the top of my head that had various federal funds that are either going to be restricted, or maybe if we get lucky there won't be any. But I can't imagine that this is only two. I expect we'll have others. And you're right about that. Sometimes the Lord works in strange ways. So we just need to follow his plan, whatever that is, and it may give us an indication of how many hundreds of millions of dollars that we actually need to be very cognizant of here, so that we can pay our suppliers and people that are working for our state and for our education systems.
So walk us through a little bit. I mean, what happened at the end of the session? Because my sense was y'all were fairly close together, but then ultimately sine died without a budget. I mean, when did things change, or what was the problem at the end of the day?
Well, at the very end, the last week before, we have since time immemorial, I'll put it that way. Nobody in the Capitol could remember longer than 30, 40 years, but always. The last week before we sine die, we had the final budget hearings. And the reason you do that is because you've passed all of these other bills, and you kind of know what the expenses are and how much you're going to put here or there. And you're going through, we start actually establish a budget at a committee meeting in December. So with that, the budget committee establishes the approximate budget for the next year, and then it varies. So the last week, my chairman, Briggs Hobson, went down to see, we were all there working, went down to see the other side, and I think they have 4 or 5 in the House that actually do their budget. Went down to see them on Monday and Tuesday, and they weren't there. And nobody showed up. So I asked him to write a letter saying we were ready to start, because I could see this coming. We were going to run out of time. So he wrote a letter and went down to the head of their department, their group that puts together the budget, and they were all in the room together. They said, "Oh, no problem, we'll be right down. We're going upstairs." So he came back and sat there, and I stayed with him until about 9 that night, and nobody came. Then that was Wednesday, and I was very nervous about being able to complete the budget. But Thursday morning, they all showed up, said, "Let's go." So we picked up. Everybody started going like crazy. We stayed till 1:30 in the morning, Lucian. We got through 71 of 105 budgets, just going hour after hour, budget after budget, not completing, because you have to do all of them to get one budget, So Friday morning we came in, we were going to have to work all day and all night again to finish by Saturday. Our deadline was Saturday at 8 o'clock. Well, Friday, they came in around noon and said they were leaving, and they left. And so the Senate stayed, and then we stayed Saturday, and there's no House. They didn't show up. So we got caught. I mean, they wouldn't complete the budget. I don't know any other way to say it, but they just walked out. So the excuses were, well, we want to have more time to look at it, but we had to have a budget first. So when I came in the next week, I said, look, let's finish the budget, and y'all work together on the budget. No, we're not doing that unless we extend the time for the session. So well, we wouldn't have to extend the sign if you showed up last weekend. So it kind of deteriorated from there, and we ended up not having a budget, which is difficult. But as you just mentioned, it may be fortuitous.
You got time to stick with us for one more segment?
Yeah, I'll be happy to.
Y'all, this is Lucian Smith in for Richard here on Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. Stick with us. We'll have more with Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann. Good morning, everybody. This is Lucian Smith here on Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. Still with us is Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann. We were talking before the break, the legislature adjourned sine die without budgets. Did any appropriation bills pass, or are they all?
No, they're all put together. They all act as an aggregate. You have to put them all together to get the final budget. So we had done about kind of handshaked on and agreed to about 71. And we have about 30 or 40 to go, and I've encouraged the House, and they've agreed to this, that our people will start back immediately meeting this next week, it's harder now because everybody's gone. I had to get a guy from Vicksburg to get with a guy from Oxford to get with a guy from Winona.
You can't just walk down the hall.
It's harder, but we'll go through that process. And then, as you mentioned, while we're doing this, it's very healthy for us to see what's being rugs pulled out from under us. And right now it's about $400 million, but I'm very doubtful that that'll be the end of it.
So procedurally, y'all, because you've adjourned sine die, the governor is the only one who can bring you back, correct?
That's correct. He can call us back in, and of course he sets the agenda for that. So he may have some ideas on his own, and I think he's communicated both with me and also with the House side, and he may have some ideas on his own, but he'll get, everybody from a pardon to you pick it. I'll ask him to put on the call. But he's pretty judicious about that, and my conversations with him were good. We need to stay focused on what the real thing is, and the real thing is to get a meaningful budget that takes into account the kinds of things that are happening to Mississippi.
I do remember when I worked in the governor's office, every time there would be a special session, your phone would light up with people who just needed one little. It's just one little thing. It's not controversial.
Right. We need a bridge to nowhere.
Exactly.
So that he has to do all of that. Bless his heart. But anyway, he's good at it, and we'll wait until see what his call is.
So y'all are talking, though. The House and the Senate are communicating now.
Well, the budget people will be. Everybody else has gone home. I'm there every day, and we're working on other issues. Like what are we going to do next year?
Right.
The budget is the budget, but next year we really have too large of a government structure, and so we're going to spend time looking at our government structure. There's a number of different articles about how we're going to be affected by the fact the president wants to bring back on these things. So Lucian said he's bringing them back. The only barrier to him bringing them back is an educated workforce. So I want to come back again. We had proposed last dollar tuition-free community college for our kids, but we're going to have an educated workforce, assuming the president is successful and brings these things back online to Mississippi. If they're going to start a new factory here to make the transmissions for the cars or something, I got to have workers at the transmission place. So to do that, we have to have an educated workforce, and you'll see some real push now. We have a great community college system. It's spread everywhere, and you can get a certificate, or you can get 2 years towards your 4-year education. That's where we need to be. High school, the 12th grade is just really the second to last stop. We have to get another year, 2 years, or 4 years from our students in order to be competitive with the industry that's coming back here. And if you look at some of the Wall Street Journal articles, they'll say the biggest problem with bringing things back on is we don't have the workers. We don't have the people to actually do the work. And in Mississippi, we're particularly low. We have about a 56% labor force participation rate.
And that, do you think that's a function of education in part?
Well, the better educated I am, the more chance I can get more money, and the more chance I'll have somebody motivated to get up off the couch and go to damn work.
Right. So what is I know you pushed it this year. How would you do that? Would this be the state essentially funding free community college?
That's correct.
Okay. For the full 2 years?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And with that, it's the last dollar. So many of our children qualify for a bunch of federal programs or scholarships, or they may win the Kiwanis scholarship or whatever. So ours would be the last dollar tuition.
So it wouldn't be if somebody were able to get 80% of it paid for by various other things, you'd pay for 20 of it.
Pell Grant, whatever they had.
What sort of reception is that getting on the other end of the building?
Not much. They killed our bill.
Okay.
They killed several education bills, and I think vice versa. We did some of theirs, and we had a retired teacher bill that I really wanted to get in, and the House killed. They were portability a lot. There were a number of different education bills that the two chairmen just got whatever, they didn't pass. That's very disappointing, and education has been a primary positive for Mississippi, so I'm hopeful that we'll get back on stride here and do things like that. We need our truancy officers to be in our schools. We have a 24% absentee rate. We passed a bill banning cell phones. They killed it in the House. Those are common sense kind of things we should have got in, and I think because we were jostling with each other, we let some really meaningful stuff from both the House and the Senate get away from us.
We've got about 15 seconds left. Any final thoughts, Governor?
Mississippi is going to have a great year. We just need to position ourselves correctly. The world is changing. Watch the TV and what the president's doing. So we just need to position ourselves for the new world, and I fully intend to do that.
Hey, thank you for taking the time to be here, Governor.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Lucian.
Hey, good to see you, too. We've had Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann here with us. This is Lucian Smith, and for Richard on Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. Coming up next is Fox News, followed by SuperTalk Mississippi News.